So the master track. In order to master this song, back then I was using saturation. I don't use saturation on the master anymore. I feel like it could mess it up more than it fixes it, in my experience. So I don't do this anymore. Um, but for this song, apparently I did. So first thing I did was use the black box. This is an awesome saturator. I really don't even touch it, to be honest. Everything's at default. I just really 4% on a parallel saturation, but my thought process is just like how they used to do in the old days. They may have like a piece of gear that sounds really good, so they would just pass the song through a vintage preamp or a compressor, and that's pretty much what I'm doing here, just passing the audio through it, just to give it a different vibe, just so it's not so digital. But I don't do this anymore. Now I just use a EQ limiter multi-band compressor. That's it. Well, EQ multi-band limiter in that order. But this was back then when I was doing way too much. So first, a little bit of saturation. Then I do a limiter just to get the initial peaks, the initial transient shaved off, and also to get like the level up. So the thing about using one limiter is you can kind of overload it, and you can make your song sound bad because the limiter is working too hard. It's reacting to the kick and bass, and it's just squashing everything else. So in order to not make one limiter work hard, you use two. So I use the L2. I turn off the dither because you only need to dither once for your final output. Turn off the dither, and then I just use this to get just about 2 dB. I don't really even get to 3. It's just hitting 2 dB. So I'll play this for you with just these two. I'm about to play it. Ain't shit funny. I ride around town with the money. Ride around town with the money like ain't shit funny. Niggas ain't talking about nothing. Ride around town with the money like ain't shit funny. I ride around town with the money. Ride around town with the money like ain't shit funny. Niggas ain't talking about nothing. No, you ain't talking about nothing. Okay, so then, so now my dangerous backs EQ is first, but all I'm doing is just doing like a low cut. So a high pass filter, and I'm boosting the top end at 18K, and I'm doing a high. This will be a low pass filter, I guess. So I'm doing a low pass filter at 70,000. As humans, we can't even hear that, but apparently this does something to the EQ. And when you turn it on, you can hear a difference. Like, I'll play it for you. Ain't shit funny. I ride around town with the money. Ride around town with the money like ain't shit funny. Niggas ain't talking about nothing. Ride around town with the money like ain't shit funny. I ride around town with the money. Ride around town with the money like ain't shit funny. Niggas ain't talking about nothing. No, you ain't talking about nothing. You ain't talking about nothing. Like, go ahead, show me some. Go ahead, show me the money. Go show me. So yeah, it's just cutting out those low frequencies. Now I use my dangerous back EQ first, then I go to my limiter, then I go to my multi-band compressor, then I go to my final limiter. But all that's doing is I'm just doing a high pass filter to cut out some of that sub low rumble at about 12. Now I use 18, but this one I use 12. That'll just allow me to go louder, because when you try to go louder, a lot of that sub rumble stuff that you can't even hear will affect that. So I took that out. Next, I use the Oxford inflator, which I don't use anymore, but I used it here. If you are using this, I like this band split, because instead of just using one frequency band, it splits it into, I guess, like 3 or however many. So it'll be like low, mid, and high, and it'll treat each band differently. But I don't use the Oxford inflator anymore. I hate this thing. But here it goes. Ain't shit funny. I ride around town with the money. Ride around town with the money like ain't shit funny. Niggas ain't talking about nothing. Ride around town with the money like ain't shit funny. I ride around town with the money. As you can see, it just squashed it and made it quieter. I don't know. Maybe I used it wrong, but it just squashed it and like allowed me to get louder in the end. So it just squashed it. That's all. Then I did a little bit more EQ. I found out once I mixed the record, I always do this EQ last before like my final limiter, because when you mix, certain stuff starts to pop out. So probably it got a little muddy down here and probably a little harsh. So I just took that out. But yeah, just a mid-side EQ, or you can make it stereo with these two. Ain't shit funny. I ride around town with the money. Ride around town with the money like ain't shit funny. Niggas ain't talking about nothing. Ride around town with the money like ain't shit funny. I ride around town with the money. And then finally, my final limiter. So how you use this limiter is first of all, I put this to 20. You put the attack all the way down. You get the fastest release without distortion. So you go as fast as you can. Once you start hearing distortion, you pull back, and then you go to this attack and pull it back to where it's not distorting, but it's also not just clamping down on your transients. With your transients, I mean your kick and your snare. So you'll be able to hear it. But yeah, that's how to use this. I think on this song, I just used the default setting. But yeah, I'll let you hear it with this final limiter. Ain't shit funny. I ride around town with the money. Ride around town with the money like ain't shit funny. Niggas ain't talking about nothing. Ride around town with the money like ain't shit funny. I ride around town with the money. Ride around town with the money like ain't shit funny. Niggas ain't talking about nothing. No, you ain't talking about nothing. You ain't talking about nothing. Like, go ahead, show me some. Go ahead, show me the money. Go show me some. Alright guys, that was how I mix my song Back to the Basics by FlyLikeJiMi.